Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I am here with my illustrious co-host, Matt Scott. And it is that time of year. It's holiday season, and Matt just brought over a giant box of cookies that
I did not make them.
That Laura made. And we also gave a box of cookies to our host for the day, Dave Harriton. He is CEO and founder of American Expedition Vehicles, a longtime friend. We have traveled extensively together, and it has been so fun, Dave, to watch your journey of success. And thank you for taking the time to be with us on the podcast today.
I'm just glad that he's hosting.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I don't know if I signed up for that.
Yeah,
can I have a beer?
But thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I've wanted to do this for a while. I just, the schedule has never worked out, and today it did.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times, and this is the chance, which is great. So there's a lot that we can talk about, and we're going to kind of let this one just take place as it does. We're not going to be too concerned around time because I really want to make sure that we cover some of these topics completely, because you bring so much insight, I think, to the overland traveler, and then also automotive manufacturing and modification in general. And then you have a really interesting history in a personal story that I think a lot of people don't know that I think would be fun to talk about. So as I remember, you started off in competitive kayaking, and then that dovetailed into you going to engineering school, and there were some other interesting things that happened at that point. So talk a little bit about kind of what got you interested in the outdoors and then kayaking.
Yeah, well, and they were kind of parallel. But I was really involved with kayaking when I was younger, in college. That was something that I didn't know it at the time, but it really prepared me in terms of like knowing how to make molds and learning some processes that I still use to this day.
Interesting.
And just kind of learning about some industry stuff and even dealing with some contracts then. When I was 22, 23, I started working and I developed a protective skid plate, you could call it, for a kayak that had come out.
Interesting.
And in that part, I ended up starting to talk to the company and the owner, and we became pretty fast friends. And I'd picked up some sponsorship from them and started making some money selling these things, because he said, hey, if you make those things, we'll sell them. And so I did that, and that kind of parlayed itself into me helping him design some kayaks and doing some stuff that's still kind of the norm today.
Wow.
On the whitewater scene. And then that also at the same time gave me enough money. I had this Wrangler. It wasn't my Wrangler. It was actually my dad's Wrangler. And he sent me off to college with it. And I decided that thing was too small and it was too rough. And it had some drive shaft issues. So I was like, you know what? I could fix that by stretching it. And keep in mind, I had never changed my own oil at that time.
Sure.
I had never done anything with a car. But I was like, how hard could it be?
Sure.
And I went to Ace Hardware. I bought a $40 socket set. I came home. I took my dad's Jeep apart. Never asked him. And
that's the best part.
I completely took it apart.
Yeah.
And then
I'm better off asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. And then and I had been like that since I was a little kid.
Sure.
But they sent me off to college with AAA, which I'd noticed had 4 free tows. And I had become friends with a guy who was a welder. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it for you for $500. And so I figured, okay. So I took it apart. I had AAA come and tow the chassis over to his shop. And then we stretched it and he towed it back. And I put the short body on the long frame and towed it back. And then towed it back. And it took me like a year.
Sure.
And I did the hard top. I had the fiberglass skills and I knew how to do it. And took me like a year to put it together. And then I eventually, to graduate business school, I had to do a business plan. So people seem to like my Jeep. Oh, and by the way, I took it home. Once I got it done, I took it back for Christmas, back to Pennsylvania.
And your dad still didn't know?
My parents didn't even notice. Yeah, that's just, they didn't even notice.
What happened to the Jeep? But that's good.
Why is the Jeep so much more practical?
Yeah, no,
but that says a lot
notice.
that they didn't notice.
Right. Yeah, it does.
It made it look factory.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I even had the stickers on it. And
now, if I remember, I think you won an award for that, didn't you?
Well, so I won the business plan competition at the University of Montana, which is still going on to this day. But it's like today, if you win, you get like $40,000.
Yeah.
Then you got a nice pat on the back.
Sure.
And then I got to go present it to other schools, and we did really well. So they took like the top 5 people at the University of Montana and put them all on my business plan. We flew around and presented at different schools, and we were one of the few undergrads doing it. And we actually had a lot of offers for venture capital, like there on the spot at several schools.
Wow.
And investments, and I didn't take any of it. It just didn't seem, I don't know, it just didn't seem right. And it didn't seem real. And I was like, what are these people doing?
And what do they want in return?
Yeah, what do they want? And I was like, and you know, it just didn't make enough sense. So, you know, I wasn't that sophisticated to know. In hindsight, I mean, that could have been a good thing. It could have been a bad thing, but
yeah, you don't know. That's the challenge with hindsight, is it could have gone either way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I tend to keep things really simple. So what I knew in my brain is, okay, you know, you go to a bank, you get a loan to start a business. This is all I know. So, you know, my perception, right? So I did that. I took the business plan, I handed it into a bank, and I got a $35,000 loan, and that's how I started AEV in 1997.
And if I remember too, you started off in a really small shop, and you were living in the shop at the same time.
Yeah, the first one didn't have any windows, and I was working all kinds of crazy hours. Yeah. And
you've always worked.
I guess that's always kind of a good thing if you're working crazy hours.
Yeah,
and no windows. Yeah,
except you didn't know. Like sometimes I'd look at my clock and it'd say like 2:30, and I literally didn't know if that was in the morning or the afternoon until I walked out and opened the door. And some days it'd be bright and sunny, and some days it'd be really calm and peaceful and dark out.
Amazing.
But yeah, that went on for years, and then I moved to a different shop, and that was even a crazier story because that one had big fluorescent lights that didn't turn off. And I was like sleeping up on the loft under these fluorescent white lights all night. And, no hot water.
Sure.
Right? And no kitchen.
Now, was that the shop that I first saw?
Yeah.
Your stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's
and
cool.
So I lived in that, and it took me.
It was a pretty big shop.
It was a big shop, but it was like, you know, I didn't realize it till now, but he's like, you know, somebody told me, he's like, that's how they torture people now, is they don't turn the lights off.
Totally.
You know, and here I am, just happy as could be at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
My 2 dogs, and
well, you worked yourself enough during the day that when you finally hit the pillow, you probably were exhausted.
Yeah, you know, I've always been that kind of guy. I get up early and I work late, and I've never. Hindsight, I wouldn't call myself a workaholic, but now in life, I kind of look back and I'm like, holy cow, you know, that's like, yeah, you're kind of a workaholic.
Well, and it's difficult. I think for both of us, we love what we do, and we're inspired by the people that we work with and the things that we get to interact with. And it's so easy to just go deeper down the rabbit hole.
Totally. And it's, for me, you know, it was something I would be doing. I mean, I would be making something with my hands, you know, whether I was off from work then, or, you know, I'd still be up doing something. And that was something, it didn't matter to me that I wasn't making money or that I, you know, was barely surviving in a way, you know, but that didn't even register with me.
Sure.
I just wanted to make something cool.
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted to do. And so the time and the work really it didn't really faze me at all.
I remember, I think it was 2005 SEMA, I think. Was that when you brought the Iceland trucks? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're all in this parking lot, and I've got like the one overland vehicle, and I have a roof tent, and everybody, like, nobody knows what this thing is.
Whoa,
and,
dude.
like, look at that. What? You have a tent. You have a tent on
Africa.
You have a tent on top of your car. So I've got my Tacoma there, and I'm putting the stickers on my Tacoma because at last minute I'm there getting my truck ready.
Sounds like SEMA.
Yeah. And here comes Dave in with a couple flatbeds, and he's pulling these trucks off with I think they had 40-inch tires on them or larger. One of them, I think, was a JK, like one of the first.
Commander?
Yeah, there was a Commander and a TJ.
TJ, got it. Okay.
The Commander. I like the idea.
Yeah, it was like the first Highline TJ.
Yeah, so you guys were putting on like the snorkel and stickers and stuff in the parking lot, and I just remembered saying to myself is like, we're all dealing with the same thing,
man.
because what when I looked at what you guys were doing, it looked like another universe to me, another like a whole nother level of execution. But then to see you guys putting the stickers on, it kind of made me feel a little like we're all in it together. We're all just like up until midnight.
I showed up at SEMA one time when we did in 2003, we did the Brute, and we didn't get that car because it was like one of the very first Rubicons, like first 5 Rubicons off the line. And they got it to us really late. And like literally, I mean, we put that car together in like 6 days, and it was just crazy. And I remember, we were up for 5 days straight is what it was. And Dave Yagi, still works for me today. He was an engineer at Jeep, and he would take his vacation and come help me get ready for SEMA. So he was up for 5 days. And I didn't realize that you would start to hallucinate about day 3.
Sure.
I remember making the mold for the hardtop, and like in my head, I just remember kind of seeing my hands in front of me, and I could see out the door through the fan, and I just remember going like light, dark, like over a period of 3 days when I made the mold and the first top, and then I had I got it painted, and I mean like literally, I mean we talk about the paint being wet as some of the SEMA cars. This one literally, I showed up at SEMA in clothes I had been wearing for 5 days with a respirator mark with red paint on my face. I mean, that was the closest we've ever had. And we were bolting parts on there.
Sure.
And I remember Dave and I were too busy, or we were too tired to drive. And so we let my brother drive, and he came out of a 4-cylinder TJ. And so he's driving with a 28-foot trailer with this Brute on it. And this brand new Ram that Dave had brought out, he was allowed to drive Ram, so it was like a prototype with a big Cummins engine in it. And at the time, it was when they stepped up to all these newer motors. And I just remember waking up and looking over, and Jordan's towing along at 100 miles an hour. Because his way he drives is just put the foot to the floor. Like TJ, right? On
solve
35s.
every problem with wide open throttle.
Well, he didn't even notice, right? Because he's just used to driving a 4-cylinder TJ with 35s. You just put your foot to the floor, and you can't speed, right? So, and he'd never towed. I just remember waking up and like, you got to slow down.
And then right back asleep.
Middle of the night.
Now, is it by chance is that same 4-cylinder TJ the one that turned into the Brute that's out in the parking lot?
Outside,
that's small world. Yeah, exactly. So for me, I remember going into SEMA and seeing those trucks there, seeing the Commander and seeing the TJ, and they had the Panasonic Toughbook laptops mounted in the center dash, and they were the livery was like over the top about this expedition and everything, and I was taken aback, like completely blown away because it's what I was aspiring to, was that kind of level of adventure and execution and everything else like that. And I think it was shortly thereafter that we started to get to know each other, and then I did the big trip up to Tuktoyaktuk in that same Tacoma, and we stopped by in Montana, and you guys gave us a tour, we got to go out to dinner that night, and you drove the same Commander and all that. So it was really neat to see that evolution to where now you have an R&D facility in Montana, and you have a huge manufacturing facility outside of Detroit that I've been to. It's just really impressive to see how far you guys have come.
Yeah. Well, I mean, keep in mind, when that happened, I mean, I'd already been doing it for 9 years.
Yeah.
Which it is a crazy, I think back to, the very first phone call I made when I started AEV, like I got my loan, and I was like, okay, I bought a Jeep, and, to modify, I sold mine. I had to sell mine to get a new TJ at the time.
Sure.
And the very first phone call I made was to Chris Wood.
Sure.
He was the West Coast sales manager for ARB. And here 25 years later, Chris has worked for me for over a decade now.
He has, yeah.
And Dave Yagi, same thing. I met him the first year, and my brother's been with me, and a couple other guys have been there since, nearly day one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty funny that, all these people have kind of devoted their life to, my
making
ideas.
This all happen.
Yeah, so it's been humbling, and it's pretty amazing. Especially, I go back east and I look at the building and the facilities. There's 2 buildings. I don't know if you've been to both.
There's 2 now. Dang.
We've had 2 buildings, so it's
Yeah, you had the original building, which you were in
too, yeah.
you saw the original building when we came through on Expedition 7. And then recently I borrowed one of your prospectors and I went to the new building, and that was amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean, you go in there, and it's got a coffee bar, and it's it's all modern and beautiful. And I still to this day I walk in there, I'm like, who's paying for this place? You know? I mean, it's fantastic, right?
No,
you are paying for it.
Yeah, but I mean, and I've got a great business partner, two great business partners, and they really make sure that I can do what I do.
Yeah,
and they take care of the rest.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And that's super important. I mean, I can't say enough about the staff that I have now.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of the people and how much they care.
Yeah.
Not just about the product, but about the customers. I mean, just in general. I mean,
would you say
COVID thing,
that's been pretty material for you, is the fact that as you've grown, you've been able to stay in that creative space as a thought leader, as an engineer, as a creative person? Would you say that's pretty key to your success?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, the fact that it's tough. Like in the early days, it was tough because I had to do all of it.
Yeah.
Right, and human reresources and all that stuff.
Yeah, you
and
went and bought the toilet paper. Yeah. Yeah, you did it all.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, you did it all.
And that there's that point where between I always tell, like, I do a lot with the business program now. I try and go back and help out with the business school now. But it's like between 20 and between 1 and 20 employees, it's so hard. It's so hard to keep it all on track and keep things moving and keep creative. And once you get past that part, then it got easier for me. Because at like 20, you get a HR person.
Sure.
Right. And they can kind of deal with everything. And it's tough. I mean, I think now we're somewhere north of 130 employees. Wow. And it's, that's not just the employee, but it's like their family. You're dealing with a lot of stuff. And so being able to have the staff that helps make this all happen it's pretty crazy. And I was going to say, like, through the COVID thing, it's really brought to light how much the folks at AEV really care, because like we did not have a lot of the problems I was seeing elsewhere, in the news and stuff like that. I mean, it was pretty tightly knit, and everybody really tried to help out and really, put their,
because you guys were shut down for a period of time too.
Yeah, we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And then Michigan got really, they were pretty serious about it. And
the fact that you guys weathered that as well as you did.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, everybody, like we didn't know what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, you have an operation that size, the bills don't stop.
It's terrifying.
Right. But the revenue stops.
Yeah.
So you got to, how are you going to keep all these people employed, right? How are you going to keep their families, a lot of them are the main primary source of income. So, there's a lot of stress trying to figure out how to keep all these people going. And, I mean, believe it or not, to the government's credit, that there was some help, there was some assistance, but early on we just didn't know, right? Nobody knew.
Yeah.
And so that was crazy. And I would say through the whole thing, I mean, I think maybe we lost 2 employees, and
amazing.
Yeah. Through the whole, and we did have to lay people off, and it wasn't of our choosing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it's crazy. Nobody knows what's going on in the future either, but I would say for right now, things are going well. It was almost good for us because we got to take a step back and finish up a bunch of stuff. And
yeah, they're calling it the great pause now. I've heard people say that, and I feel like that.
I'm waiting for the pause to happen. Because
I
think like in
the overland thing,
industry,
the overland thing just went nuts. Yeah.
There was about a month of what is going to happen, maybe a month or 2. And then it was like, we came into spring and people couldn't do anything. And then they started buying. I mean,
it just went nuts.
Like on the Max Track side, we haven't stopped, and then you have to deal with all the additional supply chain challenges. We're kind of like you. We didn't have any really staffing problems, but, shipping, materials, all the kind of stuff that go into it. And then just the stress of the pandemic on top of all of this. And then like your business growing in a time when it's hard to grow.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time.
Yeah, it was very interesting because we hoped that it was going to be a positive outcome. So like the executive team, we all just sat down and we just decided we weren't going to pay ourselves for a while so we could keep people employed. Mm-hmm. And it was only a couple months and it was like we were roaring again, hiring people. So you just don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, and I can't say it was that good for us. Like we had we got stuck with it, like kind of a tough time because 18, the Wrangler changed.
Sure.
So that meant our revenues fell and our tooling bills went crazy because we had to retool everything.
Sure.
Every single product we make, we had to not only re-engineer, but retool.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's massive. Like the way we do things, that's a massive amount of money. And we knew that was happening. So we had planned for that, right? You got 10 years to prepare. You know the Wrangler's going to change. You got 10 years to plan. So we had planned for that. But then the Ram changed at almost the same time.
Sure.
So and it was like just a little change.
Just enough that we had to change. We had to redevelop, the bumper and the snorkels and
there were some suspension changes too.
Suspension, yeah.
So we had coils.
Yep. Well, this was like in 1819. So
yeah.
There were some minor changes on the suspension, but anyway, it just that added in, and then we got hit with COVID.
Yeah.
Now we're getting hit with the chip shortage.
Sure.
Right, because the GM Bison's a huge portion of our what we're doing right now, and they can't build vehicles. Right. Yeah. And now we're getting hit with the chip shortage, like ProCals and our little tuning devices. We can't make those. So now we're getting hit with supply chain. So
sure.
It's been tough. I mean, that's kind of how entrepreneurship is. You can't go out and spend everything because you never know.
You always have to have money in the bank.
Yeah, I haven't taken a paycheck in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Only because, we haven't been, we're back to like getting there. I think next year will be good because we've had a lot of time to catch up.
Sure, sure.
But our guys have been so busy, especially on the design side. We just had our annual meeting, and I was trying to explain to the rest of the company, like our design team has been so busy in the last 2 years, more busy than we've ever been in the entire history of the company. We've knocked out more products, and yet now the rest of the company is going to get caught up.
Yeah.
Right now everybody else is going to get slammed.
Sure.
And so I kind of, during our Christmas meeting.
Well, because you keep expanding who you are servicing. So you started off with Wrangler only, and then you started to incorporate the Ram, and then now you're incorporating GM products as well. I mean, that's pretty exciting, but it also adds a whole lot more work and complexity.
And when you're doing the OE stuff, the level of detail has to be so much more intense.
Yeah.
Because like on the, on something like a Ram or Wrangler, you can be like, yeah, that's good enough. We know that's going to work. We've got 2 decades of experience saying that's going to be strong enough. But on the OE side, you got to prove everything.
And it's got to be crash tested and everything else probably.
Oh yeah, you got to get through 11 different airbag tests, and you have to, do all the cooling and all the simulation for cooling. And it ends up being like so much more work.
Wow.
All the airbag calibrations. I mean, it's not just going through the test, but it's like doing all the developments. It's just an amazing amount of work.
Which actually leads me to one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, AEV aside, if you were to give some advice to someone who's looking for aftermarket components, what advice would you give them into helping them identify components that are well engineered and of high quality? I think that there's oftentimes purchases are made on price or they're made on aesthetics, and fortunately AEV stuff has always looked great. But if someone's looking to buy aftermarket components, what insights can you give them into finding good quality stuff? There's so much garbage out there. What should they look for?
It's kind of interesting you asked that, and I'll go back for a second, but when I started AEV, the point was, initially it was just to do the long wheelbase Wranglers, which seemed like a necessity in the marketplace. But then shortly after I started that, I realized that I wanted to buy high quality parts for these trucks. I mean, I knew what I wanted, and what just wasn't there. It was there for like Land Rovers.
Sure.
But I couldn't find anything for Jeep. And so I realized that even if you wanted to spend the money, you couldn't. So even if you want to spend the money on really high quality stuff, and this is going back, 25 years, it just wasn't an option. And so I said to myself, okay, there's a ton of cheap stuff or cheap
Adequate,
necessarily
or just adequate
bad.
things.
It's just, it's just like, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
And there was a ton of simple, inexpensive stuff in the marketplace for Jeeps, but there wasn't anything next level. And so I said, okay, somebody else has the inexpensive stuff handled. There's plenty of that. I'm going to go this route. And so, and even today, I mean, our stuff's not inexpensive, right? I really don't care what it costs. I just care that we can offer this product.
Yeah.
Because I know somebody is looking for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be everybody. It's obviously not everybody.
Yep.
So that doesn't bother me that our stuff's more expensive as long as the quality's there and the function's there. But I would say, if you're looking for other products, it's generally the kind of the telltale is there tooling involved?
Sure.
Because if there's tooling involved, and Matt's product is that way, right?
Yeah.
If there's
a super expensive tool.
If there's tooling involved, that means somebody, spent a lot of time and money developing that tooling. And so that's one good way to tell if there's some engineering behind it. And then, and just in general materials, good quality materials.
And it seems like the finishes too are always a great tell. Like when you look at, you can see products on the floor at SEMA that have flash rust on them.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and so it seems like that the coatings and the finishes are also a really great tell.
Finishes are, that's literally how I ended up moving the company to Detroit was, I was trying to make stuff in Montana. I was paying for really high quality, laser cutting and welding and, all the stuff. And then I'd go to get it finished. And the best I could do was general, powder coating.
Sure.
And powder coating will last at a maximum 18 months outside on a vehicle.
Before it fades?
Before you start seeing rust popping through
sure,
here or there,
sure.
Little pieces and parts. And then, if you're laser cutting, you get laser scale. And there's just all this, for the average guy manufacturing parts in his garage, the finishes just aren't there.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said, okay, how the car company is doing this. They're, you don't see cars rusting these days and, what's involved with that. And, so there's a lot of like the way you cut parts, with whether it's laser or water, however you do it, there's different ways to do that, and then the pre-treatments. And so literally the only place I could do that, the only place in the world you could do that at the time was like in Japan where they're making cars or in Detroit. And so the only option for me was Detroit.
Sure.
And so I went to Detroit and that's where we can get the right pre-finishes and the e-coating and the powder coating and zinc coating. Depends on the part that we do, but like when we offer a part for the OE, they require a 15-year corrosion warranty. 15 years, of like...
They require that from you.
Yeah.
Wow. I like how they only offer 7 or 10.
That's right. But the test is 15.
Sure.
Right? So we're doing all these salt spray and gravelometers, where they go into a bin where they're throwing rocks at it, 70 miles an hour, and, with 100% humidity, 100 degrees, salt. We have to do all these tests, all these scratch tests, stone throw tests. So a lot of our parts, you'll see that, they'll be covered in certain areas because of these stone throw. And the cool thing about doing that on the OE side is it trickles back to our aftermarket side.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, you learn all this
coatings,
stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff that we learn that we don't want to be a problem for us either. And, so whether it's the materials or the coatings are such a big problem in our industry. And I think you just kind of have to know, even our stuff, honestly, you have to keep up on it. So we offer like these textured paints that match the powder coat. Mm-hmm. If you put a front bumper out and you just go drive it in salt and ice and, getting stones thrown at it forever, it's going to start, after about 3 years, you're going to start to see some little pits. And if you don't take care of them, you got to handle
Bigger
it,
problem.
right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
A lot of the materials we use are galvanneal. So they actually have a layer of galvanizing pressed into the metal, essentially, before we stamp it. But yeah, the coatings are one of those things that's, and you do see some good coatings out there from some of your bigger companies. Mostly it's the companies that have some sort of OE contract.
Sure.
Because they've learned, they know. But the problem is, it's like if I were to buy something aftermarket, I would almost want to buy it uncoated. And I see a lot of people doing that these days, which I think is kind of brilliant because when I offered this bumper and I ended up spending all this money on them and I made money And then I had like 100% failure rate on the coatings, and I had to, warranty it, right? So now, as a little company, it almost put me out of business.
Sure.
Honestly, like selling 25 bumpers almost put me out of business, because now not only did I not make that money, but now I had to like buy them back at double the cost.
Sure.
It was terrible, right? And it was all because of the coating. The part didn't fail, the coating failed.
Sure.
So yeah, and I see some people doing Line X and stuff like that, or whatever urea coatings, and those work pretty well.
They just don't look quite as nice, I don't think.
They don't look nice, and they kind of fade over time, and they, if you damage it, it's kind of tough. Like, you don't want to be.
It's also super hard to clean. Like the bottom of the earthromer has it, and it's functional.
Yeah.
But you really, because it's porous.
Yeah. Right.
So it just attracts stuff, and like you can't really get it out unless you sit there with the power washer.
And even then, it's porous on a microscopic level too. Yeah. And it's heavy, and it's not perfect.
It adds kind of unnecessary weight in a way.
It adds a lot of. You'd be surprised how much weight it adds.
For sure.
Actually. But
yeah, for sure.
Just that the concept of tooling. My mind's been kind of going, and it is kind of interesting how many businesses in this industry are, they're metal shop businesses where something gets laser cutted, CNC bent, powder coated by somebody else, and they don't really have that much control over the entire process. There's really very few companies, I think, that are like tooling up. Mm-hmm. I can't think of another. I don't think anybody else does stamped bumpers. That's just got to be an insanely complex process.
I think there's some offshore stuff coming in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's an insane process to stamp like we do.
Yeah.
I
just remember seeing the machines at what was that,
Quality Metal, yeah.
Quality Metal, yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I just love seeing how stuff is made, and it's so drastically different than how most off-road industry parts are made.
Yeah, some of the presses we use are 5 stories tall. Right?
Yeah, it was huge.
They're 2 underground and 3 above.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Some of those presses, and
is that how you got interested in the use of boron steel?
No, the boron came about when GM first contacted us about the Bison. Yeah, that was a weird deal, right? It's like GM. I'm like, that's the last people in the world that I would think are going to go into the overland market at the time, right?
Yeah,
go back. And then they kind of told me what they had coming, and I was like, wait a second, they're doing a Tacoma with lockers and a better engine, a diesel
everything
engine.
We've always asked for.
Everything everybody's always wanted. And here's GM of all people doing it. And I was like, yeah, we're in. For sure, we're in. And they're like, okay, great. And then, the next thing, fast forward a few months, they're like, okay, we want, skid plates and wheels and bumpers, like steel bumpers and winch mounts and fender flares and all this stuff. I was like, great, awesome. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, this is going to be really cool. And they're like, and you have 76 pounds allotment to do it in. And I'm like, well, a gas tank skid is 76 pounds, right? It's like,
sure.
So that came, so yeah, we ended up at 200 pounds.
Well, everything's a negotiation, so.
In a way, yeah. But they're still trying to hit their payload numbers and all this stuff, so they had to rerun a lot of tests. But one of my guys, John Natosi, he knew of boron steel. He was a longtime Jeep guy or Chrysler guy, and he knew the boron steel because at the time they were using it. I think Volvo kind of initiated the use for their, for safety parts. So
like an A-pillar kind of a thing.
A-pillars, door pillars, rocker panels, and that's really the only place it had ever been used was in non-visible structural applications. And so, but John knew about it, and he knew it was light, and he's like, hey, what about this? And so, okay, this sounds great. But there was a huge learning curve on how to coat that stuff. We were the first company ever to do anything Class A, visible, with that material. And stamping it, it's a hot stamp process. So it goes into like a big pizza oven. It gets red hot. Then it goes on to these liquid cooled dyes. They're running cold water through these dyes and it's stamped and it's quenched, like hardened on the dye. But even just the way the coatings react to that material was completely different. So we had to develop a coating process that would work for the OE application. And then, it's a hard material. So even the way you mount it everything has to be taken into account with that material. Because it's, what is it? It's, normal steel is like, call it 36,000 or 36 KSI, 1,000 pounds per square inch, to actually permanently deform it. This stuff was like 215,000 pounds per square inch to deform it.
It's a good thing to make a skid plate out of.
It's perfect. And
yeah,
it doesn't gouge like aluminum gouges. So aluminum's like a terrible thing to make skid plate out of. This stuff is the ultimate skid plate material, really. And we did, to that point, we have one hanging in our office in Detroit that was the diff skid for Chad Hall's race truck. And if you think about, it's a 3,300 truck, and that thing goes after all the trophy trucks with 40-inch tires, and it's on 35s, and it's just literally dragging that diff through every race of the entire season. And
it's been dragged across Nevada.
Literally, yeah. I mean, that thing has literally been dragged across Nevada, and you look at it, and there's not a dent and not a scratch in it. I mean, the coating is completely worn off.
Sure.
In fact, I think we clear coated it and we hung it on the wall.
Just to kind of for posterity, sure.
Yeah, but it's absolutely amazing.
I think you guys had that at SEMA, and you kind of compared it to a steel one. Matt Felderman was kind of, pick this one up, now pick this one up.
Yeah.
And it was crazy how much lighter it was.
I think one was 6 pounds and one's like 26 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it does, weight is a huge deal, especially on the smaller rigs like the Jeeps and the, ZR2, things like that. And, I mean, that Bison race truck at Chad's Halls, I think it, I know it completed every single race of the season with that one truck, which is, it's basically a stock truck. I mean, it's basically what you can go buy. And it's pretty, so that material is impressive, and those skids are impressive. And if anybody hasn't gotten under a ZR2 Bison, it's pretty cool to see a factory vehicle. And to GM's credit, I mean, they were awesome to work with, and I think the engineering, well, I mean, I know the engineering team knew what they were getting into and how good that thing was, but I don't think the executives necessarily knew what an amazing truck they had on their hands for.
There was nothing like it in the mid-size segment. There was just nothing that had front and rear lockers, diesel engine, nothing.
And so people still buy Tacomas.
Well, I mean, there's a reason to buy a Tacoma too, but the fact that you can go and have a warranty, you don't have to do anything to the car. You buy it and you drive it around the world. There's nothing to be done.
I mean, to me, the thing about that was like to get a Toyota owner out of a Toyota
That's tough.
Impossible,
That's
right?
tough.
And we were seeing a lot of, Toyota, like longtime Toyota guys coming over to a Chevy of all things.
Yeah.
Like if you had told me that at Overland Expo 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would say,
Yeah.
I mean, nobody would take
I remember
that
when
down.
it was hard enough to get people into Jeeps.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, when we started the magazine, there was the vast majority of over 70% were Toyota. Mm-hmm. And then the next biggest percentage was Land Rover, and then it trickled down very quickly after that.
Sure.
And now double digits for Jeeps, and like the Gladiator really changed a lot of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to think, AEV is a big reason for that. And,
No question.
same with the Ram, too. I don't think anybody would have thought of using the Ram before we came out with those parts for it.
Which is a perfect segue to the question that I sent you. The Ram has certainly become the darling of the overland space. It has been fairly amazing to watch how quickly that transformation has happened. You see the guy who had the 4Runner or the Tacoma totally overloaded, and now he's driving a Ram with AEV stuff on it. And there's a bunch of folks that have made that transition, and the reason for it is payload. So there's other great attributes to the Ram, which we're going to talk about, but the primary driver for these people where they must make the change is that the car can't take the weight of all the accessories. So years ago, I mean, this was when you first built your regular cab on, I think you had 41s on it or something, like regular cab Ram. Yeah. The white one, and you were standing there saying, Scott, I just don't know that I would ever build a Jeep again when I can build this. and you said there's only a couple scenarios where it wouldn't work, and you were taking it on all the trails that you used to drive Jeeps on in Moab, and it was doing it. Mm-hmm. And so for the sake of the listener, let's paint the picture of why a full-size truck should be considered for most scenarios for long distance travel. I mean, maybe even the Ram in particular, but let's talk a little bit about that shift and why that's so relevant.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say that Jeeps still our biggest portion of our business, but Ram has really settled in there nicely as a nice little business. And I'll say right off the bat, I mean, I think the Ram is fantastic. Everything about it I love. You know, I'm sure the Ford's good too. I've just haven't really driven them much, or the Chevy. You know, I know I like the engine and transmission in the Chevy a lot.
Yeah.
And
I just drove the 2500 HD a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the best of all of them.
Yeah. And I've heard the Ford Trans is really good too. But, you know, going back to the Ram, which is what I know. Yeah, it kind of seemed like we were doing with the Wrangler, and everybody was overloading them like crazy. I mean, it's not that uncommon to see a 65 or 7,000 pound Wrangler.
Yep.
You know, and at the time with a 3.8, right? It just wasn't working. And I got into it because I wanted to build, I mean, something similar to, I think, you know that the Outpost 2, the camper Jeep that I built. At the time, I wanted to build something like that, but I couldn't figure out how to do it and keep the weight right. So then I was like, well, you know, it just kind of dawned on me one day. I was like, wait a second, I've been using a Ram dually to tow a 57-foot wedge trailer with 3 or 4 Jeeps on it, you know, 32,000 pounds, no problem. And I was towing it, you know, I put hundreds of thousand miles on that thing, towing it all over the country and towing all the Jeeps all over the country. And it just kind of occurred to me one day, I was like, wait a second, why don't I just build a camper on a Ram? I mean, and it's not like I was first. I mean, obviously Earth Roamer and Turtle and all that, but I was like, I'll just do that. I'll just put it on a Ram and I'll tow a Wrangler and it won't even know one Wrangler's behind it.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares? And this was just a personal little side project. But then I kind of got into it, and I love the Ram. I love the Cummins, and I love the manual trans. And I thought the Cummins with the manual, I just absolutely loved it. It's still one of my favorite powertrains ever.
Yeah, so sad that that's finally gone. I know. So sad.
I don't want to talk about it.
They were the last holdout. They were. And I give FCA a lot of, or Stellantis now.
Yeah.
Matt and I say Stellantis. Yeah.
But
that's impressive that they kept a manual transmission for as long as they did.
Yeah. Well, they just couldn't add more power, right? And
sure,
you have to be in the horsepower game, and the manual that they had access to just wasn't going to work. But anyway, at the time, I loved the Cummins with the manual. I just thought it was phenomenal. So I bought a truck. I bought a 06 with a Cummins and a manual, single cab, and I was just going to build that into a camper, tow a Wrangler, and it was just my own personal thing. And I built it, and it came out great, you know, and I got some flares from Iceland.
Yeah.
And I put some 42s on it, and I built my own suspension because I kind of realized I was like, you know, I was just like, I'll just buy a suspension. Somebody's got to have something decent. And I couldn't find anything out there that was for real.
Yeah.
All of it was gimmicky, typical aftermarket stuff. It just, you know, it wasn't function. It was, I mean, it would get the lift.
Yeah.
Well, and at the time, right, there was a lot of, you know, if you wanted to put 37s on a Ram, it was like a 6-inch lift. And that just was not going to work with that suspension. And so I ended up developing my own suspension and pushed the axle forward and did a bunch of tricks and was able to do it with 3.5 inches of lift at the time. And that thing came out so good, and it drove so appropriately.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I just couldn't believe, like, it didn't drive poorly at all. In fact, it just drove like normal.
Yeah.
The way we did the suspension. So then I kind of got my team together. I said, can we commercialize this? I mean, this is really good. Like, you guys are going to be really impressed. And again, to my partner's credit, and, you know, all of our engineers, you know, everybody didn't even ask a question, like, sure. And so we developed that suspension from a fully weld-on thing where, you know, I had to cut all the brackets off and redo everything to essentially a bolt-on kit for what we have today. And then, yeah, we built that white truck as a show car to show it. And at the same time, it was kind of...
with that flatbed. I mean, that was such a showstopper.
That's what Mario has
now? Yeah, Mario has
it
now.
But
that was such a showstopper.
It was fantastic timing, too, because at the exact same time, Ram went to the coil in the rear. So 2014, they went to the coils in the rear. And so, you know, if you take the bodies off if you took the body off the Ram and put it next to a Wrangler chassis, I mean, they're basically the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It looks the exact same, just bigger axles, bigger engine. You know, everybody wants a diesel, so here you got, you know, and even the small engine, right, is the Hemi.
Right.
You know, and people are paying a lot of money to put a Hemi in a Wrangler, but here you go, you just buy it, right? And
Like a Power Wagon's a great example of that.
Great.
It is a Rubicon with a Hemi.
Yeah. And in 12, they went to these big U-joints on the front axle. They kind of got rid of all the suspension steering issues that Ram was known to have back in the day. And they had these, this coil rear. They do a really good job with the brake lock traction control in 4-low. I mean, almost to the point you don't need lockers. And yeah, it just started to make a lot of sense. The fuel tank, the mileage, everything about it it just kind of dawned on me. I mean, I kind of got smacked in the face with my own success because I was like, wait a second, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And I love the Jeep and I love the Wrangler, but then for what I do personally, I'm like, wait a second, I don't want to tell anybody, but this Ram kind of does a better job for what I'm doing. And I'm always...
Yeah, you tow your boat around and everything else.
I literally have a trailer hooked to a Ram all the time, whether it's a camper trailer or a skid steer or an excavator or a boat or, whatever, snowmobile trailers. I mean, those things are working all the time. And I just realized that, if you want to cruise across the American West at 80 or 85, getting good mileage on big tires and towing stuff and just not worrying about
being
it.
comfortable too. And I think that's the biggest
Super
thing with the full size is,
it's a shocker. It's a shocker.
I had like 2 epiphanies with the full size truck. One, I was under my buddy Cullen's truck was on a lift, and I'm looking underneath and I'm like, oh wow, this really is like a little bit bigger Jeep. It's everything you would want to put under a Jeep. Kind of done. And then the second one I had was I parked my Gladiator next to a 2500, and I walked away, and I'm like, oh man, it's only 6 inches bigger. And I've had full size trucks and that kind of stuff, but I almost like never really took them super seriously. And then the parts started coming out for them, and everything just kind of clicked.
That was the key. Yeah. And that was the key. We started developing those parts for it. Yeah. And I think that's when people really started to pay attention. And
it just changed the truck. It looked like an adventure mobile, not a ranch truck.
Well, not just how it looks. I mean, the function was there,
for
right?
sure.
And that's the amazing thing is these trucks are engineered to, take your pick, whatever. Let's say 30,000 pounds. They're engineered to tow, right? So the cooling system size for that, and there's these, the commercial applications, the brakes are sized for that. I mean, there's so much overhead for what we do with trucks for the most part.
Sure.
That if you're just towing a 10 or 12 or 15,000 pound trailer, which, like 10,000 pounds to me, I don't even consider that really towing. Yeah. Right? That's like whatever. The truck's not going to notice it. You've driven these trucks. It doesn't even care. So if you're only towing 10,000 pounds, you've got so much overhead built in.
For sure.
For that cooling system, and those brakes, the drive shafts, the U-joints. And that's something the Wrangler didn't have. It didn't have enough overhead. And that's kind of the brilliant part of the full-size trucks is that overhead. You're getting millions and millions and millions of dollars of engineering in that overhead.
Well, if you look at 2007, all 3 of us were driving Jeeps.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at 2021, all 3 of us are driving full-size trucks.
It's funny. We always have our staff drive our products. And so at some point when we did the Ram, we took everybody's Wrangler away and we gave them Rams. It's so hard to get them back into Wranglers. Like when the JL came out, we want to put them all back in JLs or JTs, and nobody wants to go back.
Yeah, and I mean, like the JL is really nice. It's
such a great vehicle. It's the best Jeep ever made. I mean, they're just so good. They're so good. But once you're able to tow a boat, or I'm able to put a camper in the back that is got a heater and it's comfortable, and it's different.
I've got a diesel JT, which is I think fantastic. I think it's the best Jeep I've ever driven.
I really like that one.
Yeah, and it's it's modified with all of our stuff, and I just think it's fantastic, and I love it. And I love how nimble it is. And it is kind of nice to get out of the full size and get back into something a little more nimble. At least it feels more nimble. But it's, at the end of the day, it doesn't really work for.
Yeah, which one do you want to drive across the country?
Oh, yeah, it's not even a question, right?
Yeah.
Well, and just the fact that you can make an investment in a full size truck that can have the capability that you need, but can also do all those other things. You can go to Home Depot and load it up full of wood. You can pull a big trailer with it. You can.
Right. Put
a camper in the back of it. It's just you end up with a lot of things that we've never been able to do with the traditional SUVs. Like we all drove Land Cruisers or Land Rovers or whatever, or Jeeps, and you had a ground tent, and you were really limited on what you could do. They were great for what they were, but now that we realize that there's this very reliable, extremely robust platform that has, like you said, all of this overhead of capability that just doesn't exist in those other vehicles.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think on the full side, on that it's funny that white Ram that I built initially, the single cab, manual, diesel on 41s.
Yeah.
I still think that was the most capable, best all-around vehicle I've
Well, it's like the
ever
ultimate
owned.
toy. Like a single cab, full-size truck it's either for work or it's a toy, because there's no real practical
You're not going to take your
reason.
family. You're not going to take your family around with you, but it takes you and your dog. I mean, I will say,
Not my dog.
if there was ever a vehicle that I lusted after, it was that truck. And when you called me and you're like, Scott, I'm thinking about selling the truck, I'm like, oh, like I've got 2 kidneys. Like you really only need one.
Well, and I sold that truck to Mario with the understanding that if I wanted to borrow it, that would be part of the case. So he said okay.
Yeah, and I have looked regularly on like Car Trader and stuff like that to see. They're hard to find that combination that's not been abused. So you can find regular cab, manual transmission diesel trucks.
They're rare.
You can find them, but they're almost always beat. They're all they have something mounted to the back of them, or like a backhoe or
Prices
something.
through the roof.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I mean, literally,
Just a rare,
they're going
rare vehicle.
Yeah, it's like the unicorn.
It is now for sure. Amazing. One of the other things that I wanted to actually, Matt, you got any questions that you want to throw in?
Hell yeah.
Okay, throw it in.
What's the favorite car you've built?
Favorite car that I've built would be that white Ram.
That white
with
one.
The white 3/4 ton Ram with the manual.
I think the one that everybody likes the most right now is the Outpost.
Yeah, for sure.
That thing is awesome. I mean, that is absolutely awesome. I put the Hemi in it. I wish it had a diesel. I mean, the only thing lacking on that thing is it doesn't really need that horsepower. What it needs is the range. And so if I built it again with today's day, I would definitely start with a diesel.
Yeah, diesel Wrangler and then build it out.
For sure. Yeah. That thing is super neat, and
it just looks so good.
It looks good. It functions for a prototype, for a one-off prototype.
Yeah,
it worked really well.
And you built the whole camper yourself, like by hand, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that was one where it was the last year for the JK, and so we wanted to do something kind of special. We had these high-capacity springs that we were showing off, for the guys that have 6,500-pound Wranglers, and we thought, the first year of the JK, we had a pop top 10.
I remember that.
Right, kind of like a Vanagon type hard top that popped up. And so that was called the Outpost 1. So that's where the Outpost 2 came from. And we just decided, let's do that. And again, going back, this is something I've been wanting to do. I just didn't know how to do it and keep it torsionally stiff enough and deal with, mostly deal with the structural challenges of cutting the back of the Wrangler off and keeping this thing intact and, and keeping the weight reasonable. And so I thought about it for a few more years, and I finally figured, okay, I think this is going to work. But I didn't really know. You don't know. You can only do so much CAE analysis before, it's like, I think it's going to work. I think we're good. And so it turns out it did work, and it was good. And it was.
Oh, yeah, we took it across the Altar. I mean, I was in the car with you. That was amazing how well it worked.
I've taken it all over the place, and the thing there's been no failures. I mean, it's, no wrenching, right?
Yep.
I mean, Altar up in where I live, I've had it out in the snow and -10. I've been camping super comfortable, hot water and everything. It's great. And I think we did the whole camper for about 800 pounds. That's with the fridge, with the hot water heater, with the water tank, dry, of course. But yeah, 800 pounds with the lifting roof.
How much did you probably take off of that? Because is the floor pan of the JK still
gone.
there? That's gone.
Yep. All up, that it weighs 6,400 pounds. So I'd have to do some math.
That's not too bad.
But all up. So Chris Wood, he had an AEV JK with a tent topper on it, and all the stuff, right, the fridges and everything. And his was also 6,400 pounds. So,
That's just how much they end up being.
Yeah, and this one has a Hemi and a Dana 60 rear and a Dynatrac 44, heavy Dynatrac 44 up front, and Dynatrac 60 in the rear. So actually, I think his was a Hemi also, but it didn't have the axles. And I think the rear axle adds a few hundred pounds.
Sure.
By itself. And so I thought we did pretty good on the weight of that thing. And it is viable. It's like everybody wants to know, will we make that, or could you make me one? And it's just one of those things. I'd love to do that. I absolutely love to do it. If things ever slowed down, that would be one of the things I would do.
Yeah.
And I definitely, it is cool to go to Moab and do whatever trail you want to do. I guess there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, you could do anything most people are doing in Jeeps, and have the camper with you. I mean,
you could sleep.
It's really, we're like on the Altar, that night you guys were out and the big windstorm came.
Brutal. I had so much sand in my bag.
Yeah, everybody was covered in sand.
Totally.
And my dog and I are in there. I felt guilty, but we're in there.
You kind of like look out the window like.
It was cold.
Yeah.
It was cold and windy, and these guys all had 3-season tents.
Yeah.
And the wind and the sand came up underneath the tents and just filled the tents.
Yeah.
To where almost everybody ended up sleeping in their car.
Pretty much.
That night. And, here I am inside. I get in there. I wash my face with hot water, and my dog's in there. We, sit down. I think I was reading a book.
Totally.
And, socks. And my feet are up on the couch, and it was really...
Chamomile tea, anyone?
Well, and we used it as the base for everybody.
We did. We did all the cooking out of there.
Out of that. And for, would we have 6 guys?
Yeah.
That truck, it's amazing when you take a prototype like that and there's really no squawks, right? It just works.
Yeah.
And especially that was something we didn't have much time to do that one either. I hate when people talk about like, oh, we built this in, 4 weeks or something, because generally it shows. But that one, we had 10 weeks to build it. And I sat on the computer for 7 100-hour weeks and did everything, all the analysis and the design, and basically would give Jerry cut sheets. And, he would try and hold to a 30-second on the cut sheets because we were doing a lot of it by hand. And then I had a buddy of mine who has a huge router, and he cut all the panels.
Sure.
And
you used a composite core panel?
Yeah, we used a fiberglass, polypropylene fiberglass 3/4-inch panel, and we basically glued that to a steel bird cage. We did a bird cage in
it's a nice way to do it.
14 and 16 gauge. The reason I did that versus like a lot of guys are using the foam fiberglass panels, I wanted to be able to change it if I had to, because I didn't know.
Sure.
I just didn't know enough to know if this was going to work or not. And I also, because it's only like 6 feet by 8 feet roughly, I didn't really need the insulation. Although in hindsight, like if I built a new one, I would maybe change that a little bit. You do need more insulation, even though the heater's more than powerful to cook you out of it.
What heater did you put in it?
It's got an SPAR gasoline.
Oh,
SPAR.
cool. Yeah.
They were the only ones to make a gasoline one.
Yeah.
But the problem is it can more than roast you out of it. But the problem is then it just cycles so much because there's very little insulation.
Sure.
I insulated the one wall. So, the roof goes up with the solar panels. It goes up sideways and all the solar. So I figured, okay, you're always going to park facing west, and that way the solar is always going to be south. And I insulated that wall for heat.
That makes sense.
So the roof and that wall are insulated. The other ones I didn't really worry about because I was like, it's so small, I'm not worried about the cold. But in hindsight, I would probably change that a little bit. It was cool. So yeah, anyway, we spent 7 100-hour weeks on the computer and then 3 100-hour weeks building that. And part of that was painting it too, which is kind of out of our control because that in Montana, we used the shop next door to paint it for us. But those guys did a great job too. But it was just, and I think we showed up to SEMA. We didn't have the interior done when we showed that thing. But then we came back, we finished the interior, and literally it just, I fill it with water and food.
It works so good.
Yeah, and it really does work. I was surprised myself how.
And it's open
well
to the camper, right? Like there's a pass-through.
Yeah, it's a full pass-through, and even that is something I'd probably change next time. It's just it's you don't use it. Turns out you don't.
We don't use the pass through as much as we think that we would.
I've never used it.
Because then you have to you're just kind of awkwardly okay, now I have to figure out how to make my leg go this leg.
At the most, you might toss some stuff into the passenger seat just for convenience, but
in a Ram, maybe it'd be different, but in a Jeep, it's too small.
Yeah.
Like I don't even fit through the seats, and I'm not a big guy, but it's like I'd have to turn sideways to get through the seats.
It's kind of nice because you can have you have the heat and everything if you needed it.
Yep, you do.
But with the S-Bar.
The best part for me with the pass-through is my dog can lay on the couch and I can look in the mirror and see her. And that's the best part of having the pass-through. But the worst part is like just rattling. You hear everything in your fridge moving around.
Sure.
You hear your dishes moving around.
Sure.
So even if you have all the dishes, super nice, like the Earth Roamer guys have everything just so perfect. Even then, you still hear stuff rattling around.
Yeah, then your spices rattle, or something in my convection microwave oven thing rattles. And since everything is so quiet, it's just like this little annoyance.
And so that was something. I've used that thing for a few years, and I've made several pages of notes on what I would do different.
Sure.
So if we ever do come out with something for a consumer, it'll have a lot of thought and history put into that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something I'm always looking at, whether it's a Ram or whatever. I'm always trying to use real life situations to save somebody real life hassle.
It's almost like you need a separate division that you guys could spool up to make trucks like that, where it wouldn't put a lot of load on your existing resources.
I don't know. In my opinion, and there's a lot of companies that do a really wonderful job, like GXV and Earth Roamer.
Earth Cruiser, yeah.
Yeah, Earth Cruiser, and I'm trying to think of Mark's name up in Red Deer. They do a great job. For me, I've never really seen how I could do it financially successful. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the money, but you still have to be viable.
Yeah.
And
you've got 130 employees to support.
You got to turn some volume. And I don't know how to do a camper type vehicle like that, where everybody kind of wants something a little different.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem. So unless you can knock it out of the park with a 99%.
Well, and the cost to do it to that AEV quality level would have to just be.
It's going to take a lot of tooling, right? So, and you can't change it. And the nice thing about, Earth Roamer is probably the only one that has really tooled anything now. They have that, all their composite bodies, and they're really going.
I think they're the only ones that make real money too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess the Earth Cruiser guys.
Yeah, they for sure.
Stuff.
Oh, for sure.
But the problem with molding stuff and doing that is you have to be really sure that that's going to work for all of your clientele.
Yeah.
And that's the part I don't like, because I do like to tool stuff, and I like to tool it in, if I can't make 1,000 of something a year, then it's generally not worth tooling. Yeah. And I don't think any of those guys are doing 1,000 a year.
No.
No, they're doing a couple a month if they're really lucky.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's kind of what it seems like looking around. But so for me, it seems like if I could ever step away, maybe I could do something like that for fun.
Sure.
And for me, that would be a fun way to, wind down my career.
Sure.
So it's something that's been in the back of my head for a while, is doing that, because that the customers that buy that kind of thing are generally really, really good, fun people to work for.
Interesting folks. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they're interesting, and they understand, and they're experienced, and they just tend to be really they become friends.
Sure.
And and they're buying into your dream and your belief, and there's something about that it's kind of cool.
Yeah, Outpost 3 on a Ram. There you go.
I think that would be the ultimate travel truck.
I'm just saying. I
don't know.
You've got your first two sign-ups right now at this table. Where do we sign?
Earth Cruiser is doing one that size now.
Yeah, they are.
Have
and it looks
Terra
good.
Nova.
Terra Nova, exactly.
My only beef, and I get why they do it, because they do it so you can fit into the shipping container, but I just wouldn't want a pop top.
It depends on the environments that you go to. I mean, I chose to do hard side. You chose to do hard side because
my dog chose to do hard side. Let's be real.
It just all my buddies. I mean, Matt, Dave, Mike, they all drive these bigger expedition vehicles, and so there was no incentive for me to have a pop top roof. I just might as well have a hard side.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had a
You
4-wheel
have places
camper.
to hang out when the weather's bad.
Yeah.
I've had a 4-wheel camper. I've thought it was awesome. I spent some time in Alaskans. I thought they were awesome.
Yeah.
So I think it can be done. I mean, the Outpost is a pop up.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Alaskan, in my opinion, is such a cool design. I love how
It's just the
simple
same
it
design
is.
from 50 years ago.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's now
heavy.
become cool.
Yeah, they're
Super
heavy.
heavy. Yeah. Super heavy.
But I love the fact that when it does pop up, you're relatively covered. I want to say it's only like the cab over portion. That
No,
has-
even that has dropped down
Yep.
hard panels.
Yep. And there's a company that does do one with fabric pop up.
Yep.
They just changed names. Nimble.
Yep. Nimble does
Yep.
one.
Follow
Yeah.
them on Instagram. I really like the look of the GXV, like the Ram.
Yeah, yeah.
Ram GXV. They use a lot of our parts. They use our
Oh,
bumper and
what do they
snorkel
call it?
flares.
Or their adventure trucks. Yeah, they look really good.
I don't know, but I see them at Overland
Looks really good.
Expo, and I'm like, yeah, that thing.
They're,
Looks
they're the
great.
ones that do like the cool thing with I think with GXV is they really do a lot of custom stuff.
They do.
Earth Roamer, Earth Cruiser. It's like Earth Roamer. You can have a different configuration of your dinette or something.
materials,
or
yeah.
materials,
Pretty limited.
and that kind of stuff. But like GXV, like they really go deep, and then they do like the heavy duty trucks, the Mans.
Yeah.
mean,
I'm sure
that's
you're
a whole
paying for
world.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do it and not pay for it.
You just got to
I mean,
pay for it.
Yeah,
It's the only way to make a business work.
Yeah, and so to me, the problem with that is even if you pay for it, sometimes it's hard. Like, how are you going to do that and make it put the development in where people aren't going to come up with an issue somewhere?
Yeah. How do you
Like it has to
maintain
be
serviceability?
serialized.
How do you supply them with a wire harness 10 years down the road?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's where I get ahead of myself in my thought process, where it's almost like paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I can't figure out how to do one of these products on a mass production level that's going to be really high quality.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want is somebody wrenching on a truck in the middle of a trip.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say, all these trips that we've done,
Yep.
I mean, how many times have we ever gotten out and gotten a wrench set out and gotten under one?
No, minus 40 degrees up in North Canada, nothing.
No.
Every time those trucks started.
That's right, because I'm a sissy like that. I do not want to get out. So I make sure.
proper planning.
Do you remember
prevents.
us? We were in UVic or something like that, and we were trying to put DEF in the one truck, and it was so dang cold out there. I just remember us. I mean, like nobody wanted to do it because it was minus 40 trying to put DEF in these
I
trucks.
remember not being able to get the filler doors open.
Yeah, that was tough. Yeah. It was so cold.
Yeah.
It was so.
I couldn't get the filler door open.
That was one of the most epic moments was when you took that white truck out onto the Arctic Ocean. So now we make it up to Tuktoyaktuk, and Dave decides that it's going to be a good idea to like just start driving towards the North Pole. And he did. You were way out there. You were way out there. It was awesome.
I'm not going all the way to the Arctic Ocean, not driving on it.
And then
Because that's a big deal because you can't normally do that.
Yeah.
You can't get past Dead Horse for people that aren't Dave.
It was
yeah, it was cool. Yeah, that was really amazing. I mean, you were driving on sea ice with all the flows and everything. That was very cool. Yeah. That was a good question. What other questions you got? All right, so outside of four-wheel drive.
No, I got one.
Okay, you got one?
Commander. I know it. I know that this is real obscure,
Do we
but
have
it
to
looked.
tell the guests
No,
what the Commander was?
Yeah, the Commander. The Commander
I
was
wanted
the
one.
7-seat Jeep SUV made from what, like 04 to 07 or
No, 06 to like 10, I think.
yeah, like really limited production. Listen, this wasn't like it probably wasn't Chrysler's finest hour on some of the things that they did. But it always interested me that you actually did something with that car, and it's one of the ones that nobody really kind of talks about. It was on 40s, like it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was just, that truck was basically a Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
Everything on it was a Grand Cherokee, just a new cap put on it. New hat, per se.
Yeah.
I thought it would, I thought there was some,
It looked good. It had
I
the
like
right
the square.
shape.
I like the square.
Yeah.
it had a
box.
Hemi, it had a really good four-wheel drive system. Grand Cherokee has a great four-wheel drive system. have you guys driven the Wagoneer yet?
I have, yeah.
I haven't. I've sat in them, and it's really nice
The
inside.
interior is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's next level.
And so that's a Ram 1500.
Yeah.
Essentially, with a different rear frame, different rear suspension. But yeah, I mean, that I kind of.
But I almost like the look of the Commander.
Yeah.
I know that they're different periods of design,
It's
different periods of what you could do with design, but it felt, I don't know. I like,
And it looked cool on 40s.
Occasionally,
Cool.
that AEV Commander comes up for me, like whatever I'm googling. I'm like,
Where did that car end
where did
up?
it go?
I sold it to Brad Kilby,
Okay, sure.
Kilby Enterprises air compressors, and I don't know. I think he sold it pretty shortly after. I really don't know. Every once in a while, I'll get like random email from somebody
Yeah,
who ended up with one of these cars.
sure.
And it's kind of funny. Like the very first long wheelbase Wrangler, I know exactly where it is.
That car you need to get back.
So
That'd be worth getting back.
that guy, him and his son, just did like a frame off restoration on it because they had been in Florida and had seen some salt.
Sure.
So I think they had, I think they just got done, or they're probably done. I'm sure they're done by now.
We're going to be
But,
at like Barrett Jackson in 20 years. And I'll still be sprightly. You'll have a cane. And it's going to be the very first AEV truck going across.
We can hope.
Scott used that cane to break my knee.
Yeah, that Wagoneer kind of has me looking at it twice. Even though I'm not in love with the exterior styling, but I'm always kind of like, I can work with that.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I don't care for is the wheel well aspect. I mean, if the wheel wells are too low, if you open those up AEV style, that would totally change the look of that truck. Because then you could fit a 33 in there, and it's just the belt line is awkward.
Well, don't forget, it probably has damn close to 33s on it stock.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a big truck.
Deceiving.
big truck.
Yeah, it is.
It's much bigger than you'd expect, and it doesn't drive big.
No, it drives really nice.
If you think about it, it's a Ram 1500 underneath. So
which is a great chassis
core
to start
structure.
with.
Yeah, I mean, you're driving a TRX, right?
Yeah.
And then I start to think, oh man, if you took, if you start mixing and matching parts, maybe could you get something pretty? Could you get a 200 series Land Cruiser?
Oh yeah, like
American
the 200 does with
series kind of thing.
Where people on the 200 put the Tundra control arms
Yeah,
on
sure.
it, and it gives you that like kind of OE but larger stance.
Yeah. So
Are they going to put the diesel in that? I haven't
don't-
heard that yet.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
one
want
I drove had the
I want the
6.4.
6.4.
The one I drove had the 6.4, drove great.
Just great.
And then I drove the regular. It wouldn't be the Grand Wagoneer; it would just be the Wagoneer.
yeah.
I drove that one after the program back, and that also drove great. I mean, it's a really
think of the
nice
money.
vehicle on the inside. Very
Think
nice.
of the money that people spend on G-Wagons. I mean, right now, if you were lucky enough to put an order in for a 2021 G-Wagon, because there's no 22 G-Wagons, they're selling between 100 and 200 over sticker. There's so, and they're
That's
good.
silly.
They're nice. They're good trucks. They're well built, whatever. But this isn't just happening a couple of times. This is happening with like the entire production of the 2021 model year.
Yeah, I mean, right now everything's kind of
Everything's
silly.
crazy,
Yeah.
but there's money out there for somebody that wants something different.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of why it intrigues me because I know a 200 series Land Cruiser is a really nice
Yeah.
truck, and I look at that thing and I'm like, that thing has pretty good bones. The Wagoneer looks like it has pretty good bones. Although it's a little weird. I don't know if you guys have crawled under one, but the half shafts on the rear end come through the frame. So that's
I didn't know.
it has
I
an
didn't know-
independent rear.
It does
It
have
does.
an independent rear.
Yeah, it has an
air
independent
sprung.
air sprung. There's a coil option. But at the end of the day, it does have some pretty interesting bones. I think you could do some cool stuff with it, but I don't know. It just kind of intrigues me. Although, right now, I mean, our I don't think we just don't have time.
You're busy.
I want to, but I don't have time. I'm so busy right now.
For sure. So, okay, I guess this will be my question. So,
you
outside of four-wheel drives, what's one of your favorite vehicles? Because you own some vehicles that aren't four-wheel drives. And,
I do, yeah.
And
Yeah.
what do you like, and what do you like about it?
I do. I have a number of vehicles, a number of really weird, eclectic vehicles for the most part.
Don't you have a Ram Charger like the one that they made in Mexico?
Yep. I went down to Mexico, and I had a customer, one of our dealers. I told him I was looking for one. So for those who don't know, Ram made a Ram Charger, full-size sport utility based off the half-ton Ram for a few years in Mexico. I think it was 99 to maybe 2001. They made this full-size sport utility, two-door, like an old two-door full-size Bronco,
Sure,
or Blazer. And anyway, I always thought it was kind of just such an oddball that I needed one. But they were all two-wheel drive. They were all automatic. They were all half-ton, and they were all gas. So I went down. My customer found me a really, really nice one. I think it had like 35,000 miles on it. I mean, and most of those things, when you go down to Mexico, they're just beat.
Yeah.
They are so beat.
Tough conditions.
So he found one that had been garage kept, and it was really nice. And I went and bought it, and I brought it back. And I didn't try to import it or anything. I drove it in, and it would just have to get scrapped. So what I did is I kept the body, and then I bought a 3/4 ton truck, single cab, manual, diesel, Ram, and I used all the body components and shortened the frame. And I actually used the rear of the Ram Charger frame on it, but I used the whole front and the engine and everything from the Ram, and then put the back of the Ram Charger on it. So basically I ended up with a 3/4 ton Cummins manual 8-passenger diesel Ram Charger.
So cool.
And it is really cool. It's a two-door, right? But it's like, I mean, if you see it, the whole lift gate, they heisted off the Caravan. Right?
That's right off a minivan. That's great.
Mark Allen told me, because I think that was like his first project when he went to, when he got hired at Chrysler, his first project was like, take this Ram and make it into this and use as many parts as you can find off the shelf. So, basically they designed some new body sides and a roof and a rear bumper fascia. And that was, it has all Caravan parts and stuff and mix and match. It's really cool. And, so I have that truck. And I put it all together, and I hardly ever drive it, cause I don't know. It's cool because it's like a 01, it's period correct Cummins. It's a high output with the disc brakes. But if you remember those trucks, like when you start them, I mean, it sounds like a garbage truck. Yeah. Like they are loud, and it's hysterical driving
That's a 12
that around.
valve, right?
It's a 24.
24, okay.
Yeah, but it's a similar motor, but it's still really loud, like a 12 valve. And but it's always amazing. I drive that thing around, and I wouldn't really expect people to get a big reaction. I mean, it's only got 34s on it.
Sure.
BFG ATs. It's got a set of AEV wheels on it, but other than that, it's basically stock. And I drive it around, and I cannot get over how many times I see people taking photos of it, like in traffic, or like just double taking, especially when it starts.
Sure.
And it's just kind of a sleeper that I wouldn't expect people to notice, but a lot of people notice that truck.
All right, so you've got this Ram Charger, and what else do you have in the fleet that?
Like what's kooky?
The Ram Charger's
kooky.
My daily driver's an electric Fiat 500.
Okay.
What most people wouldn't expect me to drive.
And didn't you say you tinted the windows principally so that people wouldn't see you in it?
At first, yeah, when I first got it, I paid $6,500 for that car. I wanted an electric car. This was years ago. This is like I guess I bought that in 2017, but I kind of could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And so I bought it as an experiment. It was like $6,500, great, because they were at auction, right, from lease returns.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody knew
Super
to buy them
cheap.
if they were good or not.
They were so cheap.
I figured, you know what? This is when I was trying to build my Ram camper. I was like, $6,500. That's a 24 kilovolt battery pack for $6,500. Okay. Thinking ahead in my.
Sure.
I'm like, that's pretty cheap for my camper. I was like, if this thing doesn't work, perfect.
You got a whole battery pack.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool. So I was like, worst case, I've just bought this giant battery with
all the charging and all.
Yeah, with everything, liquid cooled battery, with all the stuff. And I was like, okay, this is, that's why I bought it. But it ended up being a great car.
That's what you said.
It never leaves the valley, right? It just runs me a few miles, to my office and back. But it's perfect for that. I've got a Viper, a 5th gen Viper, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a it's a carbon fiber tube frame race car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a full on race car, and I don't have anything that scares me. Like, I mean, it's like you get used to it. It's fun, but you still get out of that car and, you
little rattled.
You'll still be shaking.
You're
right?
a little rattled.
It's like riding something. It's like riding, a really scary sport bike or something. It's like you get off it and you're like, I shouldn't have just done that.
Yeah.
I should not go that fast.
Like, how many times did I almost die just now? Yeah.
Even if everything's fine.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
That car is phenomenal. And that was kind of my first kind of gift to myself when I started making some money. And
Sure.
I don't have kids, so I can do these things, right? But I've got a McLaren 650, and that one I bought. It's kind of interesting. If you look at the suspension on that car, it's a cross-linked hydraulic suspension, and it's that car is fantastic. And I wanted to see, going back, the '99 Wrangler was supposed to have something very similar, kinetic suspension, and I think the Land Cruiser does it. Did get it, right? But the '99 Wrangler and Grand Cherokee were scheduled to get it, even before the Land Cruiser. And I knew from experience how good that was, and I was kind of looking to see if I could do something with the Wrangler or the Ram with that kind of setup. So I ended up buying that car, and all these things I try and take bits and pieces of and bring it back into the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I would say on the McLaren, there's engineering wise, it's so impressive. At least at that time, their build quality and their engineering was so good that it's amazing to look at, and have this carbon fiber chassis and try and look at how they did some of the pit body, even the way they do their body panels, it kind of goes into what I want to do if I could ever do the camper.
Sure.
So, I'm looking at all the way they're doing their structures and all that stuff. And I ended up buying the car. I thought I'd just keep it for a little bit. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I still have it. So it's not the wisest move financially, but it's such a amazing car. And I think both those cars are completely underrated, and I've been saying that. And now I look at the Viper prices, and it's almost
crazy.
Like doubled from what I paid for.
People finally realize.
Yeah, now it's getting to the point
The
where
last year
should I drive it?
GTSs were down like in the 70s, 80s, and now like
180.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But think about it, V10, like you said, tube chassis, carbon panels.
Naturally aspirate 8.4 manual transmission.
Manual
They're
transmission.
never going to make a car like that.
They're
Never
so
again.
much fun to drive. I remember driving those at Skip Arbor when I was doing the racing thing, and the amount that those things would rotate, I was really, really fast in them because I drove sprint cars. And sprint cars are all about rotation. And you could get like 14 degrees of rotation or something out of a Viper. I mean, you just like steered with the rear.
They had a bad rep because you can't just jump in that car and drive it like you would if you were a journalist.
Yeah.
You have to spend time with that car, and you have to appreciate that car. I mean, the McLaren's like anybody could jump in that car and be fast. I mean, it's
precise.
Yeah, but those two cars are so different, so opposite ends of the spectrum. They're both the same power, the same speed, same everything, except they're completely different. One you get out of shaky, and the other one does it so easy that you don't even know.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, I try and bring, both those cars, I try and bring bits that I learn, or, I'm really into motorcycles, all different kinds of motorcycles. Same thing, with the adventure bike, and we've talked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned to, go light and don't bring everything. You and I go together well because we don't bring very much stuff.
You don't.
And that's kind of funny for an overlander because a lot of guys try to bring everything. And I think if you spend some time on an adventure bike or camping,
it's the best
off a dirt
way to
bike,
learn. It's the best way to learn how to camp is take a motorcycle.
Yep. I recently bought a Aviat Husky, which is a fantastic platform for exploring.
Sure.
It's only got 29s on it, but a lot of guys are running 35s on these backcountry airplanes. It's kind of funny.
They're so cool. And it's
so
interesting,
amazing.
the parallels. We're seeing more of that now where you see the overland traveler and he's also using a backcountry aircraft, or they're also in a sailboat.
Same person, right?
Yeah, it's the same person.
Yeah, I mean, I try and take a little bit of everything I do, whether it's snowmobiling or motorcycling or whatever, boats. I try and bring it back into my business. I try and learn something from all those things. And aviation's a really good one because, the mindset is you don't really get a second chance.
Yeah.
So, bringing that kind of durability and just general discipline into my shop, for instance, you don't want to, a mechanic, building somebody's car, right? If they get a cell phone call from their wife, right, they shouldn't have a wrench in their hand at the same time. I mean,
that's true.
Certain things like
Sure.
implementing stuff, that kind of stuff, just the discipline, all this stuff really helps, right? I've always been an adventurous guy, and I always like doing as much different stuff as I possibly can because I bring it all back into the business one way or the other.
And do you feel like that maybe those moments on a motorcycle or those moments flying in a backcountry aircraft, do you find that gives you a creative impulse as well? Like being in something totally different, doing something totally different than your day-to-day job, do you feel like that gives you a creative reset as well?
A reset, yeah, for sure. It kind of helps in a couple ways because one, I'm not thinking about work for just a split second. I'm like for that bit of time, it gets me out. I'm not worried about some engineering problem we're having. How are we going to do this? We've already paid for this tooling, and now we have this problem. Like, what are we going to do? I don't worry as much about the stress when I'm doing that stuff, but like I said, it benefits me in that way. It keeps me mentally straight, and it also keeps me. I just realize things like for instance, when you're camping with a backcountry airplane, right? How do you warm up your motor? And I've been thinking about we can do this, this, and this. There's this thing from here or this thing. I don't know. I can just kind of mix and match now.
Interesting.
Between boats and airplanes and cars and trucks.
Like the Russians where they take the propane tanks and they just they literally run flame on the oil sump.
Yeah, somebody's got a backcountry heater for an airplane that I think it kind of uses a whisper light type stove, and you can heat them up. But I just see a lot of parallels. A lot of fuel bladders guys are using, and it's kind of like the fuel bladders for airplanes would work really good for cars, and they don't take up all kinds of room.
Sure.
And
yeah, that's the big advantage of a bladder, which is why we use them for motorcycles. Right. So we'll never use a solid extra fuel can for motorcycles. We always use a roll.
No sense.
Yeah, you just roll it up, and then now you're space efficient again.
Yeah, as soon as you burn that fuel, you put it in, and you're done. Right?
Yep.
And but the stuff for the airplanes is even higher quality.
Interesting.
Stuff that I hadn't seen before that I can bring back into the,
that's where I first found the fuel bladders, because that's how they'll get planes really long distance and extend them, is they have these insane fittings on them and
yep, the fitting quality.
Yeah.
All this stuff just adds up if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to be found in all these activities. Whether it's rock climbing or paramotoring, all that stuff, even that little tiny stuff, there's opportunities to bring it back into the overland community or engineering. You might see something that might strike a chord with I can do a fog light mount this way, and you might be looking at something completely off the wall, but it's like, oh, that's a clever way that this Cessna guy did this.
Yeah.
I look at old Cessnas and I'm just completely blown away at what people did with no computers and how they built it and optimized it. No topology optimization like we use today. They did it all by hand, and here, these planes are flying, they're 70 years old, and they're awesome.
And they haven't really changed that much.
No, they haven't. But there's a lot of reasons for that. They should change now. If you could take McLaren engineering for the safety cage, the carbon fiber safety cage, and put that into a lightweight backcountry plane today, it would be fantastic. The problem is there's not enough volume.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't. So the technologies exist. A carbon cub's kind of misnomer, right? It's not really a carbon.
No.
There's a lot of carbon on it, but it's
yeah, like
call it superficial
engine
right?
cowl and stuff. Yeah.
But if you could do a carbon fiber safety cage in that, I mean, it would be fantastic. But, you know, so I don't know. I'm kind of always looking at how do you do this? How do you do this? What's the right way to do that?
Yeah.
This. And I'm just always, that's just kind of how my brain works. I'm always looking for opportunities to, you know, that somebody else might not have seen.
Kind of bringing it back to the travel subject, where have you been in the world where, again, you felt the most inspired? Like the trip that you did that like kind of shook you to your core a little bit?
I don't know if any place is there. You know, here's the thing. I live in Montana on the Idaho border there. And for the most part, when I travel, I realize how amazing it is where I live.
You love where you live. Yeah.
I love, like, you know, I love the valley. And I'm like, man, we are so lucky. And sometimes you travel and you realize how you start to appreciate how much you have.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I love, you know, Central America. I love that area. But I've never been to some place where I'd like, oh, I want to live here. But
have you been to New Zealand though?
I have not.
Don't go then.
But I mean, that looks like Montana.
It's like Montana, except there's a black sand beach.
Yeah. I mean, that does look super cool for sure. And I do love jet boating. So I could probably
make that work.
Yeah, and I haven't been there, so I'll leave that one on the table.
But like, for example, like that Rafiki Safari Lodge in Costa Rica that, I mean, you went to, and you told me about those guys, and then I ended up going. I mean, that place was amazing.
Buddies of mine, Loki. I mean, I love to travel. I think, you know, it's more like the places I haven't been. I know you've been to Russia. I really want to go to Russia. I mean, that's, and again, the cool thing for me, what I think about with Russia, like the one thing I want to get and take away from there is they developed all their stuff kind of in a vacuum, right? So a lot of times you look at anything mechanical and it's kind of the same anywhere in the world, you know, motorcycle or whatever, it's kind of the same. But in Russia, it's not. And so I look at that as like, oh, there's this huge opportunity to go and see things and maybe take away stuff that isn't normal.
There is like some crazy Soviet engineering,
crazy
like
stuff.
the jet powered trains. Like everybody else would be like, no. In Soviet Russia, we do it.
Well, or go into like the MAN truck facility or whatever. That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
All of it, you know, and it's the latitude I like.
Sure.
I tend to like that latitude. So that's
ride that new KTM adventure bike across there.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
It'd be perfect. I would love to do Russia. I think the next like photography trip we do with AEV, I want to do, I really want to do Bolivia.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And then through the Atacama, because I haven't been there.
High altitude desert,
Yeah, I think for a Ram, I think that would be really cool.
Totally.
And now that the Wranglers have some turbos, I think that'd be really a cool cool thing to do. So I think that's, you know, as soon as the world quote unquote gets back to normal, I mean that's kind of the next. We had that trip planned.
Yep.
Right before everything hit, and so we canceled it. Tunisia, I'd love to go to Tunisia. I mean, that seems like a really
crazy,
really easy, relatively easy trip to do.
Yeah.
So Tunisia is one that's probably, those two are probably the next
sand dunes.
Next two on my list.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Go see Luai over in Saudi Arabia or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's been a heck of an invite, and I'd love to go. I would like to start traveling, but you know,
You're busy.
My business or my life has been so busy the last 2 years. Like since COVID hit, I basically have locked up in my condo, and I've been designing nonstop. I'm on, I get up, I work East Coast hours in the morning, so I'm up at 4:30. I'm normally on calls by 5, at least a few days a week. And I mean, it's funny. I don't know. Maybe it's just my age, but like my eyes, I think, have switched my nearsightedness since I haven't been getting out much. I mean, I put like 4 hours on my boat last summer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I put 200 miles on my sled. I mean, I just haven't been getting out like I used to. I've just been so focused on work this last 2 years that it's been hasn't been real good for me. Like
Yeah.
mentally, I've needed a break, and it's starting to wind down. But we had this opportunity where to do a bunch of new vehicles. And so we've just been working really diligently on that. And I got to give my guys credit because, I mean, they've all stuck in there, and we've been asking like insane hours. You know, all of us have been working nights and weekends for better part of 2 years now.
Wow.
You know, it's not uncommon for me to be on meetings at 11 o'clock at night with the same people I was on meetings at, you know, their time, 7 a.m., my time, 5 a.m. And, you know, they're still working and I'm still working. So it's this whole COVID reset. I don't know. Like I didn't get a break.
Yeah. It reset in the wrong direction. Maybe.
We've been working hard, but I think, you know, I think it'll all pay off. We've been learning a lot. And
Yeah. Well, we can't wait to see what's coming out. So
yeah. Well, and, you know, yeah, that's the other crazy thing. I mean, we're working on stuff so far out that it's funny. The stuff that's going into production now, I've already forgotten about.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't even know. I have to ask, like, remember. I'm like, I don't even remember what that looks like, right? Because it was 2 years ago.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, it's like mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
I literally, we've moved on to, you know, 2 or 3 generations past what's just coming out. And so I literally forget what it looks like. I have to go back and remind myself. I'm like, that looks pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well, we'll get to see it.
Yeah. And
it'll come out.
And yeah, you will start to see some stuff coming out. And I don't know if you've seen like the new Wrangler bumper. I mean, that was kind of the first one where if you look at, you know, to me, if you look at a bumper, it's one thing to look at the front side, what we call the A surface. But it's another thing when you look at the back side, the B surface.
It's absolutely crazy.
And
Yeah, because you just put one on your
I just
Gladiator.
put one on.
all the thought that goes into every little fold and bend and yeah, I mean, you know, getting that thing to fold so it doesn't really bend the frame of the vehicle if you were to hit something hard and trying to get all that stuff worked out. It was, you know, and make it fully functional. You know, we like on the Wrangler, it's the tough one because we only have once every 10 years to make the design changes we really want to make. And so that one was interesting because we were able to really raise that bumper up and we were able to really give you a lot of access to the winch. You know, if you had to dig out a rope.
Which is a problem. Most of these modern bumpers don't give access to the winch.
Well, there's little
They're
things
terrible.
like the internal routing of the wiring for the lights.
Oh yeah, right.
Like you don't even, like when you look at it, it just looks right. Like it's meant to have these spotlights there. And then you kind of, like that's one that when I got the EX, I parked it in the garage, I cracked a beer and I just like kind of looked at it. And then you keep realizing these different styling elements to it. And then when it was getting installed and the guys at Summit Jeep were doing it, I'd stop by and then you realize like you were saying, there is that surface that you see, but then there's so much behind it.
Yep.
That is just like I never would have noticed the wiring channel for the lights.
Well, now we have a camera, right? So we have to hide a coax cable too. And some of the newer stuff, I mean, we've got all these new sensors for all this autonomous stuff. And
Sure.
we're trying to, you know, you're trying to design, how do you design a steel bumper that has to be see-through for all these sensors?
Sure.
Right? So it ends up getting, the more technologically advanced these cars get, the more difficult it's getting to do really off-road worthy parts. And it's really becoming a challenge. I mean, my guys are challenged. Every single part we do is not the same. I mean, it's like completely different. The architecture, we can't really copy.
Well, and that's an interesting opportunity for AEV, though, because how many other companies will be able to respond to that call? Very few.
Oh, I mean, it's
So
really,
it gives you
really
guys,
a challenge.
Yeah, it gives you guys a unique competitive advantage in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, the writing's on the wall with the autonomy and the electrification.
Yeah.
The electrification, I don't think will be too disturbing, but the autonomy is going to be a real disturbance to our industry.
Yeah, interesting.
And we're working with that, but it just makes everything that much harder.
Well, and also the OEM's focus on integrating so much aftermarket reflection in the new vehicles that are sold on the lot. So I think it takes a lot of opportunity away from the aftermarket when you can buy a Jeep with, you know, their Recon with 34s and lift and winch and
I think that's Jeep in particular.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they
really want it all for themselves.
They do, and on one hand I hate it. On the other hand, I think I'm responsible
Yeah.
a lot of what they're doing.
Well, if you look at
Yeah,
a
true.
lot of the things that you've done, so you start.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with the long wheelbase Wrangler.
Long wheelbase Wrangler. Brute double cab.
Yeah,
the Highline fenders.
Highline fenders.
Yeah.
Highline fenders.
Yeah.
Should we
Hoods.
talk about
Even
that?
the hoods were, even the hoods are like pretty similar theme, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually the whole reason why we brought you on this podcast
Where are
because
my Highline
Matt
fenders?
wanted to put you on the spot to get a set of Highline fenders.
I mean, you don't need them, right? The Jeeps come with them.
No, he needs
No,
it for
for
his
my TJ.
He needs it
TJ.
for his TJ.
Oh, so I was just down in Chandler, Arizona, and I saw there's a unlimited TJ with Highline fenders.
Where was it at?
So
Where was it
just
located?
At the Chandler Airport.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so
right.
is it
Do you
in the
remember the
long
aisle?
term lot?
It literally hasn't moved in 6 weeks. Yeah, I've seen it
Okay.
down there.
Well,
so.
if
So
you see it moving in the next
Chandler-
couple of weeks.
I tried to find out who owned it, but I couldn't.
What's your next question?
Where are my Highline fenders?
So just to clear the air about that, that was something I never wanted to stop producing. We had hired a company to make the flares for us, and it was an Australian company. And unbeknownst to us, they partnered with a company somewhere in South America. They shipped our tooling down there. Then that partnership went sour. So all of a sudden, we couldn't get our flares and we couldn't get our tooling. That company didn't pay this company. They didn't want to give our tooling back to us because, so and it was at the time of the end of the TJ production,
Yeah, yeah.
and we couldn't. afford
They were
to
on sale.
retool.
Like you had like a bunch and you did like a final clearance on them. I know that because those are the things I find on the AEV forum, and I'm like,
Yeah, I know, hindsight, but we couldn't afford to retool them at that
Yeah.
point. And the sales weren't there to do it. And again, you got to be viable.
Yeah.
No, but that's good for people to know because like it was such an impressive solution that I bet there's dozens of TJ
but how
owners
cool
listening.
is it that slipping for a vehicle that's now 20 plus years old, and some of them that like these parts are becoming like super sought after because they just were so well done.
They were.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah, and like finding an nth degree suspension or whatever,
Yeah.
shout out to Jim on that. I mean, just like people that really redefined the way that you build a Jeep.
Well, people still haven't done better things. Like you go back to the first thing that we talked about, what should people look for? And that tooling thing that you said just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Because there's no shortage of high clearance fenders for a Jeep, but they're
Bent metal,
cardboard,
welded, yeah.
They're cardboard aided design. They're
Yeah.
limited to kind of basic traditional fabrication techniques, and you're just not getting a stamped proper fender.
You're not getting something that looked like it came out of Jeep itself.
Yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
that was, I think, where we really succeeded was, a lot of my guys have worked at Jeep or at Chrysler or,
It's another benefit of the Detroit thing. Like you're talking about the boron steel. Like, could you do that anywhere else?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Could you you couldn't get the talent. I mean, like if you wanted to hypothetically start a bumper company in, well, let's just say Montana. I mean, I guess now maybe you could get people to relocate, but you're relocating everyone. Like the cost of that, you're not going to get that collective talent.
Yeah, no, Detroit made a lot of sense. And,
Yeah.
and I love Detroit. I mean, I don't.
It's a cool city.
But
It's a cool
it is
city.
a cool city.
It is totally cool.
It's got an awesome art, food,
Yeah.
music, car scene, obviously. Everybody's in the car industry. So I love going there, and I love hanging out with my friends there. It's always a good time. And I don't know why Detroit has such a bad rap, because it really has. There's so many positives.
I've always had a good experience. I mean, when we hung out at Camilo Pardo's place that night, and like it was so good. That was so good. Yeah,
that's probably a wild night.
yeah.
But yeah,
Different podcast.
But yeah, I mean, Detroit's just one of those places where it was the only place. It was the only location I could do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
At the quality level.
Like one of the last questions I've got is someone coming in new to overland travel by vehicle. What are the first couple things that you would recommend them to do? Like if they're going to modify their vehicle, hey, I just bought a Gladiator. What would you tell them they should think about before they even start modifications? What should they do? What are the first couple things that they should look at before they go off on their adventure?
Look, the vehicles are more than capable right off the showroom floor.
There you go.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, until you gain some experience and really run into an issue, there's almost no reason to do anything. In fact, a lot of the stuff you're going to do is actually going to put you backwards in terms of engineering, reliability, durability. So I think it really just depends on what you need to do with that truck, whether it's a Gladiator or ZR2 or, Ram, whatever. The Ram's one of those things. It's kind of an interesting question because on the Ram, it's a little different. The Ram is so heavy and so under tired.
More tire.
That until you hit this 37-inch tire threshold on the Ram, and it completely changes that truck. It changes the ride, changes the handling, all for the better for what we're doing. And it changes the footprint enough where it gets over this threshold where it's, a 37-inch tire on a Ram is probably the perfect tire for everything, for doing everything. I mean, the 40-inch trucks, they all look great.
Oh, totally.
And they do work really well. But then there's this whole learning curve with 40-inch tires. I mean, that's a lot of mass that you're moving. So,
and you feel it going down the road more than the 37s. The 37s track a little better, and
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, here's the deal. If your tires are like your 40s, if you have them and they're balanced good and they're tracking good and they're relatively new, I mean, they'll drive every bit as good.
Sure.
I drive routinely. I mean, set the cruise basically as high as it'll go up in Montana. And, even towing, right? I mean, my trailer tires can't keep up with what the truck can do.
Sure.
That's one thing I found out. But I'd say for somebody just getting into it, just keep the vehicle stock and kind of learn and try not to get carried away in you need this, you need that. Because, here's a guy who makes a living selling aftermarket components. You don't need hardly any of it. I would say the first thing I would buy, honestly, is a satellite text, like the Spot text messenger.
That's great.
I mean, that would be the first thing I would buy, and keep it on you. Don't keep it in the vehicle.
Yep.
Keep
on
it,
your person.
Keep it on your person. I mean, that is the one thing I literally will not go out in the woods with, whether it's on a snowmobile or jet boat or car or airplane or anything. I mean, I keep that thing in my pocket all the time. And I learned the pocket thing the hard way when a friend of mine lost a jet boat and lost his phone and all his stuff for a week in the bottom of the river before we got it out. But had that been a different situation, I mean, that could have been a real problem.
Yeah.
Keep it on your person. And that's the only thing I would say you really need. That and a pretty good education to, figure out what you do and don't need and what just what you want to do with the truck.
Yeah. And then maybe when the vehicle's not doing what you need it to do, then maybe consider changing something.
Yeah.
But it's incredible how capable they are. We just got this little Ford Maverick. Now it has no low range.
Cool.
It has no low range. It's like a mini truck. It's actually super charming. Yep. I mean, I haven't tested it fully to give an impression, but just the idea of it is very charming. But I took it out the other day on our test track, which is covered in snow right now. And this little thing it was doing all of it. Like it was going through. I mean, I'm paying attention and I have some experience and all that, but it was incredible how capable it was. And it's just an all-wheel drive. It's no low range.
Yep.
And it has a truck bed that you could actually lift things into.
Yeah, totally.
I just want one to put my dirt bikes in because then I would actually ride my dirt bikes because currently I can't get them into my truck very easily.
And it's got great little set of tires, good traction control. I would go drive it over the Mojave Road tomorrow, no problem.
And that's kind of an interesting thing is that the technology has gotten to the point especially with brake lock traction control that wasn't there 5 years ago even.
Sure, no
but
question.
It is there now.
Yeah.
And these OEs, they do a pretty good job. All of them do a pretty good job of getting these things to work pretty good. There's certain things I don't like the Rubicon Gladiator. I do not like the suspension at all. like stock. I think
Yep.
it's terrible. It's wishy-washy. It's all over the place.
Super soft. Yeah.
I hate it. And
The
that can be
Mopar
fixed.
kit is even worse.
I just,
And then you can fix it with an AEV 2.5-inch dual sport lift.
don't get me in trouble here. But you know that. So there's some like most are wins from the OE. There's some fails, but
Yeah.
I'd say most are wins. You know, and
Totally.
I think it's only going to get better.
These small displacement turbocharged engines are actually
Phenomenal.
Totally surprising.
Well, their torque band is just like,
It's so surprising.
Yeah, and even more impressive is the transmissions.
Yeah.
To I mean,
yeah, that's where cars are getting faster.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's the difference between your McLaren and your Viper. Like the reason your McLaren will smoke it.
Yep.
It's because like a manual transmission is only as fast as the fleshy bit inside.
100%. Yeah. Yep. And
They're amazing.
Yeah, like the 8 speeds that they're putting in.
I mean, the
in
new
like
8-speed in a
Jeeps,
Wrangler?
the ZF
Yeah.
8 HP is
Such a great
It's the only
transmission.
thing. I mean, I somehow talk about this transmission all the time, but it's the only thing that Bentley and Rolls-Royce agree on is that is the transmission to use.
well, and as I recall, it's in all the BMWs.
All
right now.
BMWs.
It's in the TRX.
Yep. Yeah, the 95s and the TRX. That
Same transmission.
900
right?
horsepower,
Yeah.
1,000 pound-feet of torque that thing will handle.
Yep.
From the factory. That's the ZF rating.
Right, and
I
that's
might
what
be
they're-
mixing those figures up, but it's
That's where they were getting issues with the manuals. You know, they
Yeah.
couldn't, and that's the thing with automatic, right? They always love it because they can detune when they need to.
yeah.
So you don't, they don't have to, like with the manual, you got to rely on the person,
Sure.
the brain and the right foot. Yeah. On the automatics, they always love it because they can back that stuff off if they think you're really going to do something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
like
now they
think
get good fuel economy and they drive great.
They usually like detune power in like first and second gear in a lot of the like the big trucks, I think.
Yeah,
right?
there's all kinds of strategies.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I would, again, going back to that thing about I see a lot of people making big mistakes. And normally it comes, like one of them is cooling. That is like a huge pet peeve of mine. They put a LED light bar in the hole in the bumper that's made to give the intercooler power. Right.
Good point.
And in that, like when we're doing work with the OEs, I mean, it's literally like, okay, there's 586 square millimeters of surface area in this hole. You guys cannot violate that by 1 millimeter. And then we have to hold these holes and these airflows, to that. I mean, it's really, really specific. And you see guys doing it, right? They put a big light bar in the front of their Ram and they just don't know that they're derating. It's going to derate immediately. Or I see it on the TRX. Like, I see people putting on these different bumpers and changing the airflow and everything. And just, keep in mind that these engineers spent a lot of time, and there are literally thousands of people. And I have meetings. I have like Zoom meetings now with 200-300 people on the meeting. And we're talking about, things like that. And there's so much that goes into the OE engineering that if you're going to modify your car, really, you take a step back. It's not, there's a lot of considerations that you may not know right off the bat.
And ultimately you end up with a poorer performing vehicle because you're
100%.
not,
And
not,
even a lot of the companies in the aftermarket don't know. They just don't have the experience to know
Sure.
how critical some of this stuff is because, maybe where they live, they've gotten away with it. They didn't notice anything. But then you go and send that product somewhere else, and that's one of the tough things with AEVs. We're doing stuff, typically left-hand drive, right-hand drive, gas, diesel, all over the world. So every different country. I mean, you should see, we have spreadsheets on spreadsheets of license plate specs for every single country.
Sure.
They're all different.
Yeah, sure.
They're all like a millimeter different. And so getting back to that, it's just like there's a lot of the stuff is engineered for really important reasons. It's not just aesthetic. And so you just be careful when you're modifying a car to think about those things.
Yeah, so there you guys have all heard it from the guy who makes some of the best aftermarket components in the world is just be mindful of the things that we do change to our vehicles. And it's an understanding that every modification may come at a negative cost as well.
Yeah, I mean, and typically if you're going to have a positive in some area, you're going to take away in another.
Yeah.
It's just kind of how it is, right? And I'll say that even about my stuff. I mean, you're adding weight, you're changing aero, you're going to have a deduction somewhere else, maybe fuel mileage or
Sure.
wherever it is. It's going to happen. There's no very little free lunch.
Yeah.
So
maybe the boron skid plates. Free
those
lunch.
are pretty fantastic. The problem with those is, I'd love to do those for Wrangler or something or Ram, but it's so expensive.
Sure.
And the tooling is so expensive that unless you have really high volume like we had on the Bison, you can't really afford to do that.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I wanted to do one of those for a KTM.
Oh, that'd be
like
insane.
Even for a 450 dirt bike.
That'd be insane.
I've tried these aluminum ones.
Yeah.
They just gouge.
Sure.
They get ripped off. I finally went back to a plastic one because I think, maybe for the most part, they take the hit and they do okay. But I thought, oh man, if I had the volume, if I had an in the industry, I wanted to do a boron steel.
It'd be insane.
Skid for that because it weigh less, maybe weigh the same as a plastic, but it'd be absolutely indestructible. And it feels good too. The
stiffness that would add to a chassis too.
One, it's slippery on the rock too. It's not like, when you hit
or a branch or whatever, logs, rocks, all that.
And you guys have ridden like a bigger 990 type bikes. with an aluminum skid, I don't know if you've been on the rocks, but it just gouges and you can just feel it like, scraping.
Hitting the brakes, yeah.
Yeah, hitting the brakes big time. Whereas that stuff is so hard, it just slides right off.
Oh, that's amazing.
When can I have
Doctor.
my TJ Highline kit?
Dave's got one hidden back in the back shelf. So.
I'll sell you a TJ. I have a TJ with 34 miles on it, 2004, with a Highline kit.
Is that the one that I think I know?
And I think it might be coming up for sale.
And on that bombshell.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. It has always been so enjoyable to spend time with you and the adventures that we've been on and the inspiration that you have been to me and so many other folks in this industry, your business, your team, the things that you guys have created. I think it's such a high watermark that many of us aspire to, and you should feel a lot of confidence around what you're doing. It means a lot.
Thanks. Well, I couldn't do it without the whole team that I have, in Montana and Detroit. And those, all those people, all these products, you can tell that people put their heart into it.
Yeah, for sure.
And even the guys at GM, it's amazing. Like, you might not think like a OE there would be people who would care, like take it personally, when they're working within a company with thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. But that's not the case. And I'll say the same thing about Jeep guys.
They do care.
It's like, people take this stuff personally, and they really argue and strive to do their best and to get that best product out there for the customer. So the customer really should have a lot of confidence buying a lot of these products.
Well, thanks again, Dave, and we look forward to your next adventures. We look forward to hearing more about your flying adventures and everything else. So we'll make sure to keep track on that. We need another cover image for Overland Journal, so maybe the Bolivia trip. So, well, thank you again, Dave, for being on the podcast. Matt, anything else you got?
Oh man,
Highline kit.
Thanks, Highline kit, and thanks for just doing next level stuff. Like
totally,
particularly with the Ram, like. I really just think because of AEV, it's made this whole like segment possible.
Yeah, totally. Like 5 years ago, there was like nobody was talking about full size trucks.
Well, even the power wagons weren't selling very well, and then now, you can tell they're selling better because you just see them all over now, right?
Yeah.
Like 5 years ago, you didn't even see those. Now, that's a pretty neat little truck too.
Super cool truck. It just needs more payload. It really does. They need a Power Wagon HD, or they need something that competes with the Tremor.
Like a Prospector?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just the payload solution. So, well, we thank you all for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.